Trier, a charming city with so much Roman heritage. Founded in 16 BC during the reign of Roman Emperor Augustus, Trier is Germany's oldest city and an important site for ancient art treasures and monuments, such as the Porta Nigra, the best preserved city gate from the ancient world. Roman emperors and later bishops, electors, and ordinary people have made Trier what it is today. A whole host of world-class architectural monuments, many of which have UNESCO World Heritage status, and art treasures have been preserved and tell moving tales of times gone by. Porta Nigra, the Amphitheatre, and the famous Imperial Baths, where the Romans went to relax, all bear witness to Trier's extensive classical heritage. Medieval buildings, such as St. Peter's Cathedral, the oldest church in Germany, and the early-Gothic Church of Our Lady, are also deeply impressive. On the Hauptmarkt, main market, the historical market square in the middle of the city, European cultures and cuisines meet one another. Restaurants, cafes, and shops form a nice contrast to the World Heritage sites. Trier's location in the corner of 4 countries gives you many opportunities for new experiences. Luxembourg is right at Trier's doorstep. In only 45 minutes by car, you are at the French border, and in only a few minutes more already in Belgium. Porta Nigra. When the Romans laid the foundation stone for the Porta Nigra in AD 170, they would never have imagined how successful it would be. After all, the city gate was just one of 4 in Trier at the time, and one of many throughout the Roman Empire. Today, some 1850 years later, the Black Gate is the best preserved Roman city gate north of the Alps, and the #1 attraction when it comes to Roman structures in modern-day Germany. It doesn't even really matter that we don't know for sure how the Romans themselves named the gate, because what we do know is that it has been called Porta Nigra for at least 900 years. Karl Marx statue his monumental statue, which has stood proudly at Simeonstiftplatz, near his former home on the eastern side of the Porta Nigra forecourt, since 5 May 2018. Main Market. Anyone expecting dear guests will make their living room look nice and open their doors wide. This, too, is why the Hauptmarkt puts its best side on show. As the city's living room, it's filled with colorful flower stalls 6 days a week, enhanced with the aromas of fruit and vegetable displays, and pulsating with commercial hustle and bustle, while also at peace in itself, fully aware of the centuries-old history surrounding it. The pedestrian malls open out into it or radiate out from it on all sides. It's all a matter of perspective, and it's worth constantly changing this to discover new things. On the steps of the Market Cross, Marktkreuz, at its center, erected in 958, and thus the oldest in all of Germany, you only have to turn slightly northwards to see the Porta or eastwards to see the cathedral. And finally, it's worth looking up to see the different building exteriors, which, with Madonnas, gold stars, water features, and oxen, all compete for the title of most unusual facade decoration. Even though this title has ultimately been claimed by the Steeps, with its watchful knights' figures and arcades of pointed arches, it is only by taking in all the surrounding buildings that the Hauptmarkt becomes what it today continues to be. The heart of the city that welcomes all its visitors. St. Gangolf's Church. Making provisions for one's future was almost more important for the people of the Middle Ages than it is today, because purgatory and the Last Judgment meant the future encompassed both this life and the afterlife, which was a good thing if you were as financially comfortable as Adelheid von Besselig, the wealthy widow of the Lord Mayor. She invested her assets in things like raising the spire of St. Gangolf's Church, and had her and her late husband's class coats of arms featured on the northern side of the spire, so no one would forget her contribution. Pious actions which she hoped would shorten the time she and her husband spent in purgatory. The citizens were overjoyed, as this also involved setting up a fire watch at the top of the spire, thereby better protecting the city. The Basilica of Our Lady. A fine-sounding name is a big responsibility, and when a church bears the name of Liebe Frau, i.e. St. Mary, who was known as the Mystical Rose at the time of the church's construction in the 13th century, expectations are high. But the Liebfrauenkirche certainly won't disappoint. In the contrary, stepping inside, you become immersed in a mystical world of light, where it is as if every window decoration, every painted bud, and every altar has been ennobled. As you leave, you carry this world along with you. Cathedral of St. Peter architecture students from all over the world have it easy in Trier. One visit to the cathedral, and they've got a snapshot of all European architectural styles since the antiquity. Architecture students from all over the world have a tough time in Trier. One visit to the cathedral, and they're simply stunned by the rich forms, the thrilling balancing act achieved by a wide variety of architectural styles, and the way different tastes from the last 1700 years all coexist alongside, with and on top of one another. But don't despair. Anyone who approaches the cathedral with a curious and open mind will understand it. They will admire the playing of the light in the ancient square building, Quadratbau, that today continues to be the heart of the church. The Imperial Baths one look at the monumental beauty of the Imperial Baths window arcades is enough to tell you that those who once lay in the hot water pools here sure knew how to live. Bathing during imperial times had long ceased to be merely about cleaning the body. It was about otium, leisure, and there was plenty of that at the baths. People could spend yours in the 40-degree waters of the caldarium, rewarded with a view of the Petersburg's hills. They would be oiled and massaged by slaves, or have cold water poured over them in the cold water bath as they sat enthroned on marble armchairs. The Roman Bridge. Its basalt pylons date back to the mid-2nd century, making it the oldest bridge in Germany. Admittedly, Even the Romans in Trier started out by experimenting a bit. Two wooden bridges which previously stood at this site, the oldest of which ties in directly with the city's founding in 17 BC, started being replaced by today's stone pylons in the year 144. But its success story is unparalleled. To this day, the Roman bridge remains one of the city's central hubs, with thousands of cars, cyclists, and pedestrians crossing the river here, just as millions of other people have done over the last 1900 years.